Hello, dear viewers. We lore masters of Kenshi have long since pondered about the lost and forgotten history of this tidal-locked moon, piecing together the dark and gruesome origins of its denizens through contextual clues left in the wake of the repeated cycle of cataclysms. But of all the hidden stories buried beneath the dunes, none have amassed more curiosity in me than the nature of Kenshi's first empire. In previous videos, I have discussed what we know about their time on Kenshi as a technologically advanced superpower, how they colonized and controlled the face of Kenshi for unknown generations, until being felled as victims of their own creations in the form of the skeletons. After fending off a threat of cataclysmic magnitude, the First Empire, fearing the strength of their own creations, ordered the behemoths, massive automatons of immeasurable strength, to march to their deaths in the pit of what is now known as obedience. In response, the skeletons rebelled and turned their own weapons against them, and suddenly these near godlike beings were on the verge of extinction, unable to defend against the onslaught of those that were created to serve them. And while this story does answer how the once great empire fell, it does raise a number of questions about the origins of these beings. Where did they come from before colonizing the face of Kenshi? Were they part of a larger empire? And if so, why is it that after the skeleton rebellion on the moon, they were seemingly abandoned by the remainder of the empire? Well, dear viewer, today I am going to speculate on those very questions as we delve into the possible origins of the First Empire. It has long since been speculated that the First Empire was that of a spacefaring civilization not native to the face of Kenshi. The largest pieces of evidence to this claim is the presence of the Eye satellites, large destructive devices that have long since been speculated to act as both a method of orbital bombardment and a terraforming device, meant to burn away elements not suitable for life, thus creating a clean slate to alter as they saw fit. And the presence of what appears to be a space elevator in the ruins of the Ashlands, hanging above Catlan's exile with no visible supports or structure keeping it aloft. Indeed, it would appear that the citizens of the First Empire were capable of high-level Type 1 or Type 2 technology on the Kardashev scale, and likely draw their origins from the stars themselves as part of a larger, more glorious empire. But something about that has never sat right with me. Why is it that after the skeletons rebelled against their overlords, the greater empire from which the ancients were derived didn't return to quash the rebellion? What would cause them to seemingly abandon the moon that they spent so much time and effort to colonize? Unless, of course, they weren't part of a more vast and greater empire, but instead the dwindling refugees and remnants of a fallen one. The tech hunters state that the First Empire was largely populated by that of skeletons, leading some to wrongfully speculate that the skeletons were the dominant race in society. But given the dialogue exchanged by skeletons and non-skeleton squad members when approaching obedience, it becomes clear that the skeletons, while vastly outnumbering humanity, were in fact subservient to them. Created to more efficiently colonize and rebuild humanity after a cataclysm of some kind wiped out the existing empire, forcing those who survived to flee to the moon of Kenshi. Perhaps they even originate from the planet of which Kenshi orbits. And lastly, we should consider that the behemoths themselves, and their place in a long since whispered about ancient war against an unknown threat. In my video regarding the history of the First Empire of Kenshi itself, I entertained the likelihood that this threat was a kaiju-level organic lifeform that existed on Kenshi. Their presence warranted the creation of the skeleton behemoths to combat, and are likely responsible for the gargantuan bone-like ruins that are scattered across the surface. If such an empire existed among the stars that was capable of controlling technology on such a planetary scale, one would think that even beings of this magnitude would be nothing compared to their overall might. And yet they seemingly almost brought the First Empire to its knees prior to their eventual defeat. Taking these tidbits of information, I can begin to weave you a story of the possible origins of the First Empire, and how they came to find themselves on Kenshi, as well as why we will likely never see them again. Now, the tale I'm about to tell you, dear viewers, is almost entirely speculative, a combination of loose threads being stitched together with pieces of information that we have gleaned from the ruins of what once was, and whether you choose to believe it is entirely up to you. Somewhere on another world, may it be one far away, or even one that looms over the sky of Kenshi as we know it, there existed an empire. One who had transcended that of our own, and propelled themselves forward into a glorious age of power and influence. They may have even been prepping or began to expand outwards into the stars. However, for reasons unknown, something threatened their world, something on such a level of calamity that extinction was all but guaranteed. Maybe a rebellion began to tear the world asunder. Perhaps a meteor threatened the safety of their world, or generations of consumption caused resource shortages, leading to its people dying en masse. But regardless of the reasoning, plans were formulated to save those that they could, and extend the counter on the clock of Armageddon. A collective of people, numbering no more than a few hundred or thousand at most, their brightest, most skilled scientists and craftsmen, engineers and political figures were spared from the devastation and sent to Kenshi as the last bastion of hope for humanity. There they lingered in orbit using satellites to terraform the surface to their liking, and utilizing sentient AI technology to make up for their numbers that they lacked. An immortal workforce, never needing to sleep or eat, capable of endless production. Except they came to learn that their brush with extinction wasn't over. They came to learn that they weren't alone. The surface of Kenshi was home to a gargantuan beast of untold power and destructive capabilities. Fearing the possibility of total collapse, they created the behemoths to combat them. Skeletons that were fiercely loyal and obedient to their creators, as well as large enough in scale to stand in strength against the threat. And after an unknown amount of time, they were successful in their campaign. This, however, left them with a new problem. The very weapons they forged to fight back against the native titans of Kenshi were now seemingly the only threat to their survival, and so they ordered them to march into the pits of obedience, never to leave. And as we discussed in my video on the known history of the First Empire, this directly resulted in their near complete eradication from the surface of Kenshi, as their workforce turned on them in rebellion, taking control of their facilities and satellites, using them to systematically bring humanity once again to the precipice of extinction. And while they did survive, the true origins of the human race on Kenshi was lost forever, buried beneath the slag and rubble of the sites they once occupied, leaving only the broken remnants of the height of human civilization and burning curiosity in the minds of all those who wander them. What was once a great empire that likely spanned across the stars had systematically been reduced to nothing more than the last flames of humanity, forever on the verge of flickering from existence.